Hey hunters, I'm Marneus. The festival's well underway, and with it comes a Gunlance that's, well, amazing. That's right, we're talking about the Cornpopper. It might sound like a snack, but don't be fooled. This Gunlance can really pop off in a fight. In this video, we're digging into whether this Ear of Destruction is just a corny joke, or if it's got the kernels of a true powerhouse. Let's fire it up and see if the Cornpopper really pops. Alright, let's take a closer look at the Cornpopper stats. Right off the bat, it's sitting at 190 raw damage, which is currently the lowest base raw of any Gunlance in the game. It comes with one level 3 slot and one level 2 slot. Perfect for slotting Artillery 3 and Load Shells 2. Pretty ideal for a shelling focused setup. It's a wide shelling type, but what really sets it apart is that it's the first Gunlance with strong shelling power in the game. Now let's talk about its unique skill. Crackling Cornpopper. Here's how it works. When your Gunlance is overheated, meaning both Wyvern Fire charges are on cooldown, you get a buff that boosts your shelling power and fire attack. That probably explains the low base raw. It's clearly meant to pop off after your big explosions are spent. And here's a fun touch. The Cornpopper visually changes, taking on a burnt, charred look like a corncob left a little too long on the grill. It's a clever detail that also visually signals when the buff is active. So how much of a damage difference are we talking about when Crackling Cornpopper is active? Well, with the buff active, I'm getting 76 damage per shell with no armor skills. Once the buff wears off, that drops down to 58 damage per shell. That's a noticeable difference, especially for something like moving shelling, which is a low commitment, repeatable attack. The extra pop definitely adds up over time. Now, to keep Crackling Cornpopper active, you'll need to Wyvern Fire as soon as it's ready. Basically, stay overheated as much as possible. But here's the catch. In Monster Hunter Wilds, every time your shelling or melee attacks connect, you regain Wyvern Fire charges faster. So ironically, the more aggressive you are, the harder it is to stay overheated, which means Crackling Cornpopper won't stay active long unless you manage it carefully. And honestly, it's easy to miss when the buff's gone. There's no obvious HUD icon, and if you're not watching the Gunlance's visual change, the charred corn look, you might not even notice it dropped off. Just something to keep in mind if you plan to run this Gunlance seriously. It rewards awareness just as much as aggression. Alright, let's talk damage comparison, specifically Cornpopper versus the ever-reliable G Lawful Bors. Now, I know most of you are skipping Ardean, whether it's for the look or that painful RNG grind, so we're using G Lawful Bors as the benchmark here. It's a fan favorite and easily one of the most accessible wide shelling Gunlances in the game. First up, Wyvern Fire. This is where G Lawful Bors really pulls ahead. With a base raw of 240, it absolutely outclasses Cornpopper in Wyvern Fire damage. And in Monster Hunter Wilds, Wyvern Fire recharges pretty quickly. So the longer the fight, the wider the gap becomes between these two. To make things worse, Crackling Cornpopper doesn't even boost Wyvern Fire. We're still not done. G Lawful Bors also comes with better slots. 2 level 3s and 1 level 1. Perfect for fitting in offensive guard, attack boost, or whatever else your build needs. And don't forget, it also comes with 2 levels of guard built in, making it comfy, tanky, and plug and play right from the smithy. So yeah, when it comes to Wyvern Fire, G Lawful Bors dominates here. Alright, let's move on to moving shelling. This is where Cornpopper starts to pop off, but only when Crackling Cornpopper is active. With the buff active, it hits for 76 damage per shell, which edges out G Lawful Bors, sitting at a steady 65 per shell. However, before the buff kicks in, Cornpopper's shelling damage drops below Bors, so you're really banking on keeping Crackling active if you want that edge. And that means constantly managing your Wyvern Fire gauge, firing off Wyvern Fire the moment it's ready just to stay overheated. It's a bit more effort for a bit more payoff. So in short, Cornpopper wins on moving shelling, but only when you're playing it right. Alright, last comparison, Burst Fire. Without Crackling Cornpopper active, Cornpopper's landing 76 damage per shell in the Burst Fire combo. Not bad, thanks to that strong shelling power, it still puts out respectable numbers. Now, G Lawful Bors, it clocks in at about 86 per shell, mainly due to the higher base raw. Plus, with Dragon Element, you're getting a little extra damage from the melee hits during each loop, So unbuffed, yeah, Cornpopper's definitely behind. But once Crackling Cornpopper kicks in, you're looking at 101 per shell. That's a big spike, and if you can keep that burst fire loop going, it actually evens out with Bors in terms of output. You can squeeze in about 7 full loops before the buff fades, which is pretty generous. Bottom line, unbuffed, Cornpopper holds its own, but Bors wins on consistency and uptime. Buffed, Cornpopper evens the playing field and becomes a real contender. Now, this corn leans heavily into move shelling and burst fire. I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of move shelling personally. It's kind of boring. You're mostly just spamming one button and waiting for the monster to attack so you can perfect guard. It gets the job done, and with Cornpopper it actually does work, but it's not the most exciting way to play Gunlance, at least for me. Now, burst fire, this is where Cornpopper really shines. It's hands down the best way to use Crackling Cornpopper, since you're maximizing the buff uptime while you wait for your Wyvern Fire to come back online. You can absolutely rotate in Wyrmstake Full Blast too, just probably save it for when your Wyvern Fire is about to come off cooldown. That way you're speeding things up even more with the bonus recharge from the combo. So yeah, Burst Fire is the main course. Move Shelling is the backup snack, and Wyrmstake is your situational spice. And that's it for the Cornpopper. Honestly, I hope we keep seeing more Gunlances like this, ones that shake things up without outright replacing the meta. It's just more fun experimenting with different playstyles than defaulting to Wyrmstake full blast spam every hunt. I'm also working on a Gunlance build video featuring Uthduna Gamma, so if you're curious how the Gunlance set pairs with the tuna, stay tuned. Thanks for watching, I'm Marneus, keep your shells loaded, and I'll see you in the next hunt.